This debate should be centered on the interrogation of anti-blackness. The act, plan, and performance doesn't interrogate the structures that promote anti-blackness. You should lose because your silence on anti-blackness reflects a refusal to confront the iniquities suffered by black debaters. Resistance Debate 12. Lack of community discussion is neither random nor power neutral. We have tried to have discussions. These discussions have been regularly derailed in wrong-form arguments, in the demand for evidence and the unfair burdens placed on the aggrieved or as a prerequisite for engagement. Ed Warner to Rashad Evans to Devin Cooper to Amber Kelsey's discussion. We will no longer wait for the community to respond to relinquished privilege and to engage in authentic discussion, since largely the community seems incapable of producing a consensus or responding to what we all agree is blatant structural iniquity. This silence is in fact focused silence. It is the old boys club. And your focus on policy is making it racist, shall for. The methods and theoretical framework that dominate current policies analysis have been developed and implanted by those in power, who particularly in the world of the policy formation analysis are overwhelmingly white, male, and well-educated. Thus, traditional policy research has reflected the assumptions, worldview, and values of this group, thereby rendering such particularities as gender, race, social class, and sexuality unimportant. Since the positivist paradigm is so widely accepted in the policy world, it allows policy analysis to assume a dispassionate, objective stance and at the same time encourage the broader policy community to receive the research enterprise in this way. Traditional policy analysis is grounded in narrow, falsely objective, overly instrumental view of rationality that makes its latent basis and allows policy elites and technocrats to present analysis and plans as neutral and objective when they are actually tied to prevailing relations of power. Specifically, blindly calling forward the USFG makes you complacent. Dr. Berkeley in 2008, the stance of the policymaker in debate comes with a sense of detachment associated with a spectator posture. Its participants are able to engage in debates where they are able to distance themselves from events that are the subjects of debate. When we politically call for the United States federal government policymaking, we're not immune to the colonialist legacy that establishes our place in this continent. We cannot wish away the horrific atrocities perpetrated every day in our name simply by refusing to acknowledge these implications. Historical and contemporary practices of power that produce and maintain varying networks of oppression. In other words, the discursive practice of policy-oriented debates are developed within, through, and from systems of power and privilege. And here's the reality. You produce the same logic that causes the constant exclusion of black people. Miles 98. So the result is silence. A silence not of tactic inclusion, but rather of exclusion. The black enterprise is not subsumed under these philosophical abstractions. For the inhabitants of this universe, the standard geometries are of limited cartographic use, conceptual apparatus, prededicated assumptions that do not hold true. A reconceptualization is necessary because the structuring logic is different. The peculiar features of the African American experience, racial slavery, are not part of the experience represented in the abstractions of European philosophers, and those who have grown up in such a universe act to pretend that they are living in the other, will be cynically knowing, exchanging glances that signify there the white folks go again. Our interpretation is key, producing new philosophical and political knowledge. Berkeley 12, Berkeley 12. Why are we not producing new knowledge? I think we should be producing new arguments. If all academic papers were the regulation of someone else's argument, it would never be published. That whole point of the academic scholarship is for you to identify what's being said in the field or around a particular issue when that's missing from that. And then you do something to demonstrate why that thing that's missing in the scholarship should be there. When we have all this intellectual power, we should be producing new policies. And that would create the space for teams who want to talk about anti-blackness, or teams that want to talk about defining nature of gender and how we engage in policy. In a world of racism, all the impacts are inevitable and increasingly likely. Only dismantling the walls of racism and replacing them with the anti-racist institutions can humanity survive. We have examined a prison of racism that confines us all, people of color and white people alike. The walls of the prison forcibly separate communities of color and white communities from each other, as well as divided communities of colors from each other. The constraints imposed on people by color and subservice, powerlessness, and poverty are inhuman and unjust, but the effects of uncontrolled power, privilege, and greed are the marks of our white prison inevitably destroy white people as well. The prison of individual, institutional, and cultural racism can be destroyed. A small and predominantly white minority of the global population derives its power privilege from the suffering and mass majority of people's color. Dismantling racism also means building something new, and it means building an anti-racist society. It is a strategic choice to present policy to the app. The app knows that the debate community prefers policy app. The app has created an unfair environment and sacrificed education that could have been learned if the debate over to win a ballot. This debate should decide the app's choice to present a policy. Fairness. Their choice to use the policy in the debate is an attempt to gain a ballot on the preconceived norm that we cannot access at that point in time. Where we cannot access this is an unfair debate. We have to work so much harder to relinquish our blackness in order to win a debate, and that is not fair. This type of exclusion is inherently anti-black. Do not go for this extended mandate card, which states that racism in every single instance must be rejected. Education. They produce bad education because it's the same type of argument and evidence over and over again. Switch sides. When they are always running a policy app, they do not get to embrace education about anti-blackness. They never engage in a discussion about blackness. They never challenge the current standing of the anti-black world, and they choose to work within this. They choose to continuously present policies and arguments that do not challenge the anti-black world. They simply recreate it. In this instance, they never switch sides or consider it. They do not gain this important knowledge. Policies already accept an anti-black world. You also state that how the future of terrorism, that because of the drone strikes, more people are joining Al-Qaeda.
Cross-ex?
Since one of your very first argument, as well as your second argument, and your third, now that I'm looking at it, all deal with anti-blackness. How exactly would you define blackness?
Blackness is like the idea that there is a unhuman and a human. It's that this is a position type of thing. It's not necessarily like a skin color or something specific like that. It's a position in the world that because of certain differences that do not conform to society, you cannot take part in these societal structures.
Will you then argue that a white person can also be excluded for blackness, since you just said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
all types of oppression that are based on the spectrum of black and white, and because they possess that form of oppression, they can be excluded. That is included on that. We're not talking simply about, it's not simply a race thing. It's a structure created in society because of the dehumanization of the black body. It allows for the oppression of other types of bodies: black, white, yellow. All
Could you
that
then
stuff.
argue that? Are you then saying then that, for example, a white person born in an African country could be subjected to the exclusion of blackness because of that?
I don't understand your question.
You just said that that anyone can be excluded because of blackness. So
Yeah.
could you then argue that, say, a white person born in an African country, even though they themselves do not have the skin color, could still be
It's not a
excluded?
skin color issue.
Exactly, hence why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a different type of oppression. What we're saying is that the root of this oppression begins with the black body, because the black body, when it came, was the only body that, when it came to this country, it wasn't human.
Okay. You mentioned that we falsely objectify over instrumented mentalities. Can you explain that?
We're basically saying that your use of policy, it doesn't adhere to our black framework debate, because what our black framework debate, the center of that whole topic is that we should interrogate the use of anti-blackness in society. That idea that certain bodies and certain people are on the outside of society, and your use of policy is inherently bad because it goes through the USFG. And in cross-ex, you even said that the USFG drone strikes created the problem, but it's also going to solve the problem, and that's where the problem lies. The fact that this racist structure that keeps other bodies out is creating all these problems, but you think that whole structure can also solve the problem? That's not
Time.
that's not solving the root cause.
You need